I remember the way Erin's eyes flicked away from mine when she told me. People say love is a mirror, but I've learned betrayal is a far clearer one. It reflects every crack you've ignored, every doubt you've silenced to keep the peace. We've been planning that trip for months, a quiet cabin in Lake Tahoe, snow piling against the windows, while we pretended we still knew how to be alone together. It was supposed to be a chance, a reset. That's how she sold it to me anyway. I should have seen it sooner. How she'd glance at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. How she'd flinch if I brushed against her at night. Her body stiff, her mind somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't follow. I asked once carefully if she was happy. Of course, she lied so sweetly it almost made me hate myself more than her. The night she canceled, she didn't even bother with a lie big enough to hide inside. She sat on the arm of the couch, arms folded like she was holding herself together, and said, "Babe, I'm so sorry, but I can't go. Something's come up." "Something?" I repeated, like an idiot. She nodded, eyes darting to her phone again, the blue light glinting in her pupils like a secret she didn't trust me with. Something. I didn't push. Maybe that was my first small revenge. Watching her squirm when I didn't beg for details, didn't offer to reschedule, didn't ask her to love me the way she used to. I booked a separate car that night after she fell asleep in the guest room. I stood over her for a while, studying the woman I'd spent 10 years pretending I knew. Her lips parted, the faintest smile flickering in her dreams. God, how easily she lied, even unconscious. I didn't pack much, just the clothes I knew she hated. Threadbare jeans and old flannel, she said, made me look like my father. Maybe I wanted her ghost to see me leave, as the man she'd tried to domesticate into submission. Maybe I wanted the cabin to see the real me instead, the one she'd buried under soft compromises and marriage counselors. As the car rolled out of our driveway at 3 in the morning, I realized I hadn't left a note, not even a text. She'd wake up to an empty house, a cold bed, and no clue that this time it was me who was gone. The funny thing is, I wasn't sure where I was going at first. I just knew I couldn't stay where she'd decided to discard me. What I didn't know yet was that the man who'd leave that cabin wouldn't be the man she thought she owned. She canceled our trip for her ex. She doesn't know I went alone, and she sure as hell doesn't know I'm not coming back. I reached Lake Tahoe just before dawn. The cabin looked smaller than the listing photos. Like everything else in my life lately, an illusion dressed up as salvation. The key was under a rock by the steps, just where Erin had told me it would be back when this trip was still ours. I stepped inside and stood in the middle of the living room, letting the cold seep into my bones until my hands stopped shaking. Funny how betrayal doesn't gut you all at once. It drips through you in stages: suspicion, confirmation, humiliation, and then that raw, aimless ache that leaves you standing alone in a place that's supposed to heal you. I hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours, but when I finally collapsed on the old leather couch, I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I tried, I saw them. Erin and him, her ex, Matt Collier. The name that used to be a joke when we were dating. Oh, you'll never have to worry about Matt. He's ancient history. Ancient history had a bad habit of texting her after midnight. Ancient history apparently had tickets to concerts she never invited me to. Old inside jokes she swore were harmless. Ancient history was probably telling her he missed her. And Erin, my wife, my so-called best friend, had decided she missed him too. A rational man would have called a lawyer, or a friend, or a goddamn therapist. But I'd been rational my whole life, and where had it gotten me? Into a marriage where my loyalty was currency she spent elsewhere. Into a house that felt like a mausoleum for promises she'd murdered in her sleep. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I let myself hate her. Not the half-bored, sarcastic hate of a husband whose wife forgets an anniversary. Real hate, cold and clean. And under that hate, something sharper was waking up. The part of me she'd worked so hard to tame. By the second day, the cabin had become my confession box. No phone calls, no news. Just whiskey and old memories I tore open like scabs I pretended were scars. I found myself replaying our entire relationship backwards. From our wedding night, her fake tears when she whispered she'd never hurt me, to the first time I caught her turning her phone face down at dinner. How many times had she looked me in the eye and sworn it was nothing? How many times had I believed her? By the third day, I couldn't sit still. I found a stack of old firewood on the porch and split every log by hand until my palms blistered raw. I half hoped she'd text me. Maybe she did. I wouldn't know. I'd left my phone in the glove compartment, battery dead. She didn't deserve the satisfaction of my silence or my answers. Somewhere between the chopping and the drinking, I realized I didn't just want to escape her. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to wake up every morning and wonder if I was dead in a ditch or laughing in some sunlit cafe with a woman whose name she'd never know. I wanted her to taste abandonment the way I'd tasted betrayal. By the fifth day, the plan started writing itself. First, I logged into our joint bank account, the one she thought I was too passive to monitor. Turns out she'd been funding her little catch-ups with Matt using my overtime bonuses. Hotel receipts tucked neatly inside generic business expenses. I screenshotted everything. Not because I needed it, I didn't care about the money anymore, but because I wanted proof that the version of her she sold the world was a lie she'd have to choke on. Next, I called Jared. He was my closest thing to a brother, best man at my wedding, godfather to our hypothetical kids we never had, because Aaron always said, "Not yet, baby. I want to focus on us first." United States. What a joke. "Mark, holy shit, you okay? Erin's been blowing up my phone. She doesn't know where I am? She's losing her mind, man. Says you left without a word." "Good, let her panic. Do me a favor, Jerry. I need you to handle something for me. Quietly." "Jesus, okay, what are we handling?" I told him about the account, the hotels, Matthew. I half expected him to tell me I was crazy, that maybe it was innocent. But the longer I talked, the quieter he got. When I finished, there was nothing left but static and his measured breathing. "Damn, brother, what do you want me to do?" "Move half the money to my personal account. The rest, I don't care. She can have it. Tell her I said it's a down payment on her freedom." "You sure about this, man?" "I've never been more sure." That night, I sat on the porch with my last bottle of whiskey and a legal pad I found in the cabin's dusty desk drawer. I didn't write her a letter. I wrote instructions, new passwords, where the insurance papers were, who to call when she realized the car wasn't in her name anymore. Every line was another nail in the coffin of the man she thought she owned. Around midnight, a text alert lit up the dashboard where my phone lay dying. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I could picture her perfectly, pacing our kitchen barefoot, hair a mess, rehearsing excuses she'd never get to deliver. Matt could have her. He could have the flinching lies and the restless nights and the half-truths she served up like forgiveness. I was done tasting poison she sweetened with pet names. Out here, the snow kept falling. It buried the car tracks, the footprints, the past 10 years I'd wasted loving a ghost. I wasn't running anymore. I was rebuilding. And by the time she figured that out, the man she betrayed would be long gone, a ghost of her own making. By the end of my first week in the cabin, the version of Mark Harris who once tiptoed around Aaron's moods was already dead. The forest around Lake Tahoe is a good place to bury a ghost. Every morning, the trees stood witness to my new rituals, chopping wood until my back screamed, running until my lungs threatened mutiny, standing barefoot on the frozen deck at dawn, daring the cold to remind me I was still alive. It wasn't enough just to leave Aaron behind. I needed to understand the man who'd stayed, the coward who'd swallowed every suspicion just to keep her happy, the fool who'd once believed love meant forgiveness on tap, loyalty without question. I hated him more than I hated her. He was weak. I couldn't afford weakness anymore. One afternoon, snow hammering the roof and sheets, I found myself staring at my reflection in the black of the cabin's window. Hair unwashed, stubble like sandpaper, eyes clear in a way they hadn't been in years. A raw laugh escaped my throat. For the first time, I pitied her. Erin had no idea the man she'd betrayed was the only thing shielding her from the consequences of who she really was. Without me, the facade would crack. And I intended to make sure it cracked loud enough for the world to hear. The plan needed refinement. I didn't want messy revenge. I wanted surgical precision, a kind that wouldn't just punish her for choosing Matt, but would salt the earth she thought she'd rule when I was gone. So I made my first call. Collier Law Firm, how may I direct your call? Matt Collier, please, I said, my voice flat as old ice. One moment. The line clicked, then his voice, smug and smooth, the same tone he'd probably used whispering things into my wife's hair while I worked double shifts to pay for her birthday trips. Collier here. Matt, I said calmly, it's Mark Harris, Erin's husband. Dead silence. I imagined him checking caller ID, weighing whether to hang up. I know about you two. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. A faint sigh, a chuckle. Mark, listen. Number you, listen. I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to thank you. He hesitated. Excuse me? You saved me 10 more years of pretending my wife wasn't just an itch that needed scratching every time she got bored. You gave me back my life, Matt. For that, I'm grateful. He cleared his throat, trying to regain the upper hand. Mark, I never meant... Don't flatter yourself. I don't care what you meant. Here's what matters. You can have her, but you're taking the rest too. The debt, the house maintenance, the guilt. You're her savior now, right? Then save her. She's your mess to keep clean. He started stammering something about misunderstandings. I hung up. One more string cut. I spent the next 2 days setting fires she'd never see coming. First, the joint credit cards. Closed. The mortgage, refinanced in her name only. The family car, sold to a dealership for cash I wired to my new account under a trust Jared helped set up. My lawyer, a pit bull who owed me a favor, drafted the divorce petition and mailed it straight to her workplace, with receipts, with photos, with timestamps. She wouldn't get to be the sweet, abandoned wife in the eyes of her friends. She wouldn't cry crocodile tears to her mother about my midlife crisis. She'd stand naked in her own ruin, built brick by brick on my oblivious trust. By the 10th day, Jared drove up to the cabin to check on me. He found me on the back porch, staring at the lake with whiskey on my breath and peace in my chest for the first time in a decade. Christ, Mark, you look like hell. I grinned. Feel like rebirth. He didn't sit, just paced, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, snow gathering on his hair. She's freaking out, man. She called me 30 times. Says she'll come up here if she has to. She won't. You sure? I turned and held his gaze. She doesn't have the guts to face this version of me. He nodded, half in awe, half afraid. I could tell he saw it. The truth that under the polite husband was a man dangerous enough to torch an entire life without blinking. Where will you go? He asked. I hadn't told him yet. Hadn't told anyone. South, I said. Warm ocean, new name. Everything is new. Jared laughed softly. She's going to hate you for the rest of her life. Good, Ina, I said. Let her remember what happens when you underestimate the quiet ones. When he left, I found Erin's last voicemail. The only thing I let myself hear. Mark, please. I'm so sorry, baby. He means nothing, I swear. Just come home. We can fix this. You and me, okay? I love you. Just come home. It didn't sting. It didn't even amuse me. It felt like reading a fortune cookie written in a language I'd outgrown. A week ago, her voice would have cracked me open. Now it was background noise to the sound of the wind carving new paths through the trees. That night, I slept dreamless for the first time in years. By day 14, I'd closed every door behind me. Bank accounts, utilities, forwarding addresses, gone. The man she married no longer existed anywhere she could find. I left behind the clothes she hated, the books she'd mock when friends visited, the framed wedding photo I'd kept in my office like a shield. All of it, ashes in a place that deserved ghosts. Before I locked the cabin for the last time, I carved a single word into the bathroom mirror with my pocket knife. Free. Not revenge, not goodbye. Just free. A word I'd almost forgotten belonged to me. I didn't leave her a note. Didn't tell Jared where I was going next. Some goodbyes don't need punctuation. The bus station was empty except for a kid behind the glass who didn't look up when I bought my ticket to San Diego under the name Aaron Stone. The cash felt lighter in my pocket than 10 years of compromise ever had on my shoulders. As the bus pulled out of Tahoe, I didn't look back at the white forest swallowing the cabin. I closed my eyes and pictured the ocean I hadn't seen in years. The salt, the sun, the anonymity. She'd find out soon enough about the missing money, the frozen assets. The affair was pinned to her office corkboard by a courier with no return address. About how her friends would whisper behind polite smiles. How Matt, the savior, would taste her deceit once he realized she'd lie to him too. I wondered if she'd rage, or sob, or pretend to be the victim, probably all three in rotation, until someone else rescued her. But not me. Never again. The bus rumbled on, miles folding behind me like pages I'd already read. Somewhere out there, a version of me waited, a man without her name on his tongue, without her shadow in his bed, without her permission to breathe. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care who I had to become to stay free. I'd buried my ghost. Now it was her turn to live haunted. The ocean was not a promise. It was a reckoning. 3 weeks after I vanished from Erin's life, I woke to the sound of waves battering the pier outside a rundown motel in Pacific Beach. Salt crusted my windows. Sunlight turned the torn curtain into a flag of freedom, and my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror startled me. Hair trimmed short with hotel scissors, eyes clearer than the lake I'd left behind, beard gone, replaced by the faint lines of someone I almost didn't recognize. I called myself Aaron Stone now. The ID was real enough to pass casual inspection, Jared's final gift before he cut ties to protect his own family. My bank account, meanwhile, had grown, because a man who spent a decade filing his wife's taxes knows exactly how to hide money she thought she'd drained. I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. But true freedom is not just escape, it's confrontation. The real ghosts weren't buried in snow. They traveled south, wearing her perfume and whispering old guilt into my ear every time I let my mind go quiet. So I didn't. Instead, I booked a table at a seaside bistro on a Wednesday afternoon and emailed Erin a single line from a new, untraceable address. Meet me at Blue Point, 3 p.m. Come alone. I knew she would come. Betrayers always believe they can negotiate with the ruin they caused. When she walked in, pale under too much makeup, hair scraped into a bun that didn't hide the stress she thought I couldn't see, I felt nothing but a surgeon's calm. She spotted me instantly and flinched as if I'd slapped her from across the room. She slid into the seat opposite, clutching her purse like a hostage might hold a hidden note for rescue. "Mark," her voice cracked. "Is it really you? Oh my God, Stop." I didn't say it loud, but her mouth snapped shut like a dog trained too well for its own good. A seagull shrieked over the railing. The waves below punctuated the silence. "You're alive," she whispered, as if she'd earned relief. "Where have you been? You can't just disappear. I was going out of my mind." I tilted my head, studying her the way I'd once studied ledgers for hidden debts. "You were out of your mind the day you decided he was worth our life together." Tears came fast. The performance she used to buy her way out of consequences. She reached for my hand across the table. I let her fingers hover an inch from mine before leaning back, folding my arms and letting her desperation hang there, unrequited. "Mark, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I understand you needed him to feel special. I understand you thought you'd keep both of us orbiting your loneliness forever. But here's what you don't understand." I leaned in, close enough to see the tiny tremor in her bottom lip. "I'm not your planet anymore." She sagged back, mascara bleeding at the corners of her eyes. The waitress approached, caught the scene and pivoted away. "Smart girl." I placed a slim manila envelope on the table between us. She glanced at it like it was a snake about to strike. "What is this?" "Your new life. Divorce papers, signed and filed. Your affairs documented. Good luck spinning it to your mother. Half the savings are gone. The house is yours. So is the second mortgage I never told you I took out to cover your credit card debt. Enjoy Matt. He can pay for your taste." Her hands shook as she pulled out the first page, scanning it. "You can't do this," she whispered. "You can't just erase us." I laughed. Short, sharp, ugly. "Erase us? Aaron, I buried myself. The one who let you cheat on my hope. He's rotting under 10 feet of snow. The man sitting here is a ghost with a lawyer and no more illusions. She lunged for sympathy, voice cracking. Mark, please. I love you. I never wanted to lose you. I cut her off with a raised palm. You didn't lose me. You traded me. You just thought the price would be lower. I stood. She flinched again. I think part of her, deep down, had always suspected a man that must be capable of violence if pushed far enough. I wasn't. Not the physical kind. Mine was more permanent. I leaned close so only she could hear. I wanted to see your eyes when you realized you never broke me. You freed me. And someday when Matt gets bored, when he cheats like you did, remember this moment. Remember I'm the one man you can never crawl back to. She tried to speak, but her mouth found no words. I left her there, a ruin wrapped in designer silk, trembling beside the cold ocean she'd once planned to visit with her boring, reliable husband. Outside, the sun burned against my skin, a cleansing heat. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a single message from Jared's burner. Done. All accounts closed. Paper trail gone. Safe travels, brother. I turned toward the pier, my shadow stretching ahead, longer than my past, weightless as my new name. I didn't look back. I didn't stay to watch the storm I'd left behind. Some men like to see their ex-lover's life go up in flames. I preferred to imagine it in ashes. So distant I could no longer smell the smoke. By nightfall, I was back in my motel room overlooking the restless Pacific, legs stretched out on the balcony railing, a warm beer in my hand. Below, the waves gnawed at the pilings like they'd been doing for centuries. They didn't care about betrayal or bank accounts or false apologies. They just swallowed what they were given and asked for more. In the days that followed, I lived like a man unburdened by context. I didn't answer calls. Jared's final message was all the closure I'd allowed myself. No news, no gossip, no mutual friends hunting me down to hear my side. There was no side. There was just forward. I spent my mornings running barefoot on the cold sand, feet pounding away the last of Aaron's voice in my head. I ate street tacos at dusk, greasy and perfect, their salt tasting more real than any anniversary dinner we ever shared. I learned to surf badly, falling more times than I stood up, laughing salt water out of my lungs until the sun bled orange behind my scars. At night, I sat in coffee shops scribbling in cheap notebooks under my new name, Aaron Stone. Sometimes I'd jot down my old life, not as confession, but as proof. See, once I was this man. Then I made the impossible choice, and he died so I could live. Once or twice, I caught myself wondering if Erin had tried to find me. Maybe she'd begged Jared to break his silence. Maybe she'd blow up Matt's new life when she realized he wasn't half the safety net I'd been. Maybe she'd stand in court, playing the victim to a judge who'd see right through her. But the thought faded like an old bruise. What did it matter? A ghost can't be summoned if he doesn't wish to haunt. After 2 months by the ocean, the final piece of the man I'd been cracked off me like an old scab. It happened one night, unexpected. I was drifting through an outdoor market when I heard a band playing an old song Aaron once claimed was our song. I paused, expecting hurt, anger, nostalgia. Nothing came. No ache, no fury. Just the taste of grilled shrimp on my tongue and the warm crush of people moving past me in all directions, none of whom knew Mark Harris, the fool who once mistook sacrifice for love. I laughed out loud. Heads turned. I didn't care. Freedom sometimes sounds like madness. Yeah. The next morning, I bought a ticket to Costa Rica with cash and left without telling anyone. A place with warm rain, cheap rent, and nobody asking where you're from if your money's good. I found a studio apartment above a surf shop run by a retired pro who didn't give a damn about my past. He called me gringo and taught me how to read tides instead of people. Some nights when the wind rattled my shutters, I'd dream about the lake, the snow, the day I chose to become my own savior. I always woke up grateful it wasn't a dream, that the nightmare had been the life before this. On my 100th day in exile, I sat by the ocean at sunrise, a battered notebook balanced on my knee. I wrote down 4 words I never had the guts to say to Aaron, not even in my angriest moment. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for forcing my hand. Thank you for being the betrayal sharp enough to gut the coward inside me. Thank you for choosing him, because in choosing him, you gave me back me. I tore the page out, fed it to the wind, and watched it disappear across the sand. There would be other loves, or maybe there wouldn't. I didn't care. The point wasn't to armor myself against being hurt forever. The point was knowing I could survive it, knowing no one would ever hold my spine hostage again. One evening, under a bleeding sunset, I sat on my balcony with my battered old phone. The last trace of my former life. I tapped out a message to Jared. Brother, I'm good, really good. If she calls, tell her you don't know me anymore. It's the truth now. He replied with a selfie of his kids asleep on his chest in one word, proud. The ocean thundered on. In its endless break and pull, I heard my own pulse. Steady, unstoppable. Its rhythm set not by guilt or fear, but by choice. I raised my bottle of cheap beer to the horizon. Not to Aaron, not to Matt, not to the man I'd buried under snow and lies. I toasted the man sitting in that plastic chair, sunburned shoulders and all, the one who saved himself when no one else would. I drank deep, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going anywhere I didn't want to go. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.